back home. One of the things that, because she was born in Cambodia, all of her, what we call Mings, which is aunts in Khmer, they tell her, oh, you're Khmer, you're Cambodian. And so if you ask her, Addie, are you American? She goes, no, I'm Cambodian. And we're like, no, actually you are American, you're not Cambodian. But she doesn't get that. So the population of Cambodia, 16.7 million people, and there are 2.2 million currently living in Phnom Penh, which is where we are stationed. A lot of missionaries, when they come to Cambodia, they actually leave after they do some language school, and then they depart from Phnom Penh and they go out into all the different provinces, which is great. Haley and I felt there's actually a really big need for Phnom Penh specifically, and because of the 2.2 million people, and it's actually estimated to rise by 7 million people by the year 2030. Phnom Penh is growing immensely, and all the people are actually coming back into Phnom Penh, and that'll play a factor into some future ministries that we're looking at later. 97.9% of them are Buddhist, with 2% of them being Islam, which means an awesome percentage of 0.3% are Christian in Cambodia. And so it is a vastly unreached people group. When we look at Cambodia, this is the primary method of getting around. Motos and tuk-tuks. Our kids get to ride in the lap of our tuk-tuk driver. This man, he's a Christian. He is our primary tuk-tuk driver when we need to go somewhere fairly quickly in the city. He's been a blessing to our family. When we got there, we originally said we're never going to drive a moto. It's just too dangerous. Well, not only are we driving a moto, but we're driving 4 on a moto, much like Khmer people, and we always get stares because it's like, here are these 2 huge white people with their kids on this clown bike, really is what it looks like when I'm on it, and we get lots of stares and stuff. My 2 oldest, Olivia and Jackson, they are driving around now on motos, and it has progressively given me gray hair every time they go out on a moto, but we've been grateful or gracious so far. This is the open market. So kind of a funny story. When we first got to Cambodia, we're learning where to buy different things. And in Cambodia, we don't have the Home Depot, right? We don't have a Walmart. We don't have any of those things where you can go and get pretty much anything you need in one store. It is a Easter egg hunt to find things. And it never dawned on me and really like how difficult this was until it was Christmas Eve, our first year there, and all of a sudden, I'm like, man, something just smells terrible. I mean, different, abnormally terrible, okay? I mean, it smells bad anyways, but abnormally terrible. And all of a sudden, I look down, and I have, like, sewer water, right, pouring into our house. And what's happened is that somehow, some way, the drain or the sewage started backing up and it started coming into our house. So I go into where the bathroom's at, and we're having problems. So I'm like, okay, I need a plunger. I don't have a plunger. Where do I get a plunger? And so I get on my moto and I go to a guy that he sells different hardware stuff, and I'm like I told Haley, he's like, I don't even know if I know the word for plunger in Khmer. And so I'm showing pictures. Bless the Lord for that kind of technology, right? Otherwise, I'm doing like actions. It's like, right? And they're going to look at me like, whoa, this guy. And so, I'm showing pictures. He's like, no, we don't have that. And so I'm like, well, do you know where? And he's like, oh, I'll try these people. So I go down there. Needless to say, it took me about 2 hours to find a plunger in Cambodia. And then when I did find it, it's like all the plungers in Phnom Penh were in that location, because you get to this location and you like, that shop sells plungers, that shop sells plungers, that shop sells plungers, like all of them, like 50 of them sell plungers. And now you're sitting here going, wait, what shop do I go to? Which one's cheapest? I don't know. And so that's just kind of a little insight into the culture and kind of the things that we were dealing with. It literally, I always laugh, people ask, well, what'd you do today? bought a plunger. They're like, oh, what else? No, you don't understand. It took me 4 hours to find a plunger, okay? And they're looking at me like, okay. Some other sights and sounds, you'll can take your bike pretty much to any shop, and they have the ability to fix the bike tire. So here you have Tatum and Riker taking their little bike to our neighbor, and he's doing fixing it. Here's Tatum and Addie. I tell you what, having kids in Cambodia is one of the best things in the world. It opens doors like you won't believe. I can't tell you how many gospel opportunities we've had, how many conversations we've been able to have just because we take those two with us. We'll go to it. This is our local market. It's about, 5 minutes from our house, and we go there, and they absolutely love them to death. They'll give them stuff for free. They'll do. Addie's looking at the live fish. They have live fish in this bowl, and they're flopping around. And one flopped out, and she screamed and yelled, and they thought that was the funniest thing in the world. And then they're giving her like duck eggs, and they're giving her bread, and they're giving her all sorts of things, which is a problem because when we come back, she's going to walk into Safeway, and she's going to expect stuff, and she's not going to get it, and she's going to be like, why aren't these people like giving me stuff? This is what we do. I'm cute. And I keep asking like that, why don't they give me stuff? I'm cute. And they don't. So some other weird things that just adapting. This is my oldest daughter taking our two youngest, and I don't know if you can see it or not, but she doesn't have shoes on, and she's walking down the middle of the street, and that's just kind of what you do. The shoes are optional, although I have always told her, wear shoes, because when in Cambodia, when you go into any building, you're lucky I'm actually wearing sandals, because when you usually go into a building, you take the shoes off, right? Because you don't want to track what's inside. And I told my daughter, I'm like, you just completely ruined that whole philosophical thinking by going barefoot outside. Like, now we got to take your feet off. Just got to say. Bugs, this is a spider. Parker is holding by the leg. It is dead. It is cooked. And yes, I have tried that. And yes, it is interesting in taste. It actually tastes like a very bland snow crab, okay? With a little bit of crunch, like popcorn kernels because of the legs. So if you ever come to Cambodia, you will be eating one of those, so prepare yourself. Neighborhood kids, that we get to be around and to see and have a privilege of being a testimony to, and just presenting the gospel and allowing them to see what our family's like. We feel like we're in a zoo a lot of times. They will have kids just at our gate staring in at us. And it's like, well, you want me to do a trick? Don't know. This is my two youngest again. They're learning how to ride a bike Khmer style. This is what they do. One person will ride the bike, but hey, there's extra room on the bike. It's called the back tire, right? And so they'll hop on the back, and they'll ride around just like this all the time. And so here, our two youngest are going Khmer style. Cambodia is home to the largest religious building called Angkor Wat. Angkor Wat means city of temples, and it was built in 1100s. It takes up over 400 acres of land. It was originally a site for Hindu worship, and later it was changed to Buddhism. And so that kind of gives you an idea of Khmer culture religiously. It is actually a kind of a struggle or a challenge to really pin down what they believe, because it's a unique blend of animism, right? They worship their ancestors and their spirits. There's Hinduism, and then there's Theravada Buddhism, all mixed together. But they would call themselves Buddhists, but they're not really Buddhist. They're their own unique religion. So here are just some pictures of Angkor Wat. That girl right there, that Khmer girl that you see, her name is Lucia. If you know, or if you've read our recent newsletter, you'll know that name. And I'll talk about her in a little bit later. This is standing in front of a different temple called Bayon, but it's all connected. So Angkor, there's like a major temple called Angkor, and all around it connected are all these different vast web of temples as the Angkor dynasty grew. And this one is one of our favorites called Bayon. All right, so kind of getting into some of our ministries. One of the things that we decided to do, especially in our first 2.5 years, is, okay, we're learning the language. We need to develop relationships. We need to figure out what this looks like. And so we started, and it still continues today. It's a little bit hit and miss because I travel a lot. But we do this, what we call Saturday night ministry. What we do is we invite Khmer people that we know, that some are friends and we know that are believers, and some are friends and they're not believers. Some are neighbors, some are in this case, this girl there, her name is Visa. She was a college student, or a high school student who graduated from high school, and she came to Phnom Penh for college. And so we invited her over. I don't know the exact connection. I can't remember. My wife does. But she came over and spent quite a bit of time in our house. And what we did is we just played games. We hung out. We cooked. We would do Western food one week, and then the next week they would do a Khmer dish for us, and then the next week we would do some kind of Western dish. And it was a sweet time of just fellowship. We would hang out in our backyard. Of course, again, they loved Addie, and Olivia was doting on some of the Khmer babies there. We would grill up in this case, this is some kebabs. This is actually a Khmer dish. They seasoned it a certain way. This was good. There have been some that have been like, sure, that's food. That's good. I can sort of eat that. This is one of our neighbors. Again, in our newsletter, you may have heard her name is actually, we know her as Nayat Mul's mom. We call her Ming. That's kind of what you do. You don't really know names. It's Ming. In fact, okay, funny story. I'm not going to tell that story. Sorry. Just from a restrictive standpoint, I'll tell that story. Sorry. If you want to hear a good story, you can come up to me afterwards and we can have a conversation. But we know my daughter only knows Mings, and so trying to decide which Ming she's talking about, it's like, which one is it? She's like, oh, the one with the black hair. The short one. Still don't know. So we've started a nickname, Nayat Mul's mom. Nayat Mul is a friend of my daughter, and so this is her mom. She is devoutly Buddhist, and this was actually the first time we were able to get her to our house. She's always friendly, super friendly, loves our kids, but she would never come over. This is one of the first times we actually got her to come over to our house and fellowship with other believers that we invited. That's the purpose. We invite believers and unbelievers, and the idea is to mingle, and then it helps us also with language. So that's our ministry. We also have a youth group ministry. This was born out of COVID. Our kids were going to a youth group at an international church there in Phnom Penh. When COVID hit, everything shut down, and Haley and I were just like, man, this is rough, right? We're alone here. We didn't have any teammates. And so we started, there was a missionary couple down the street from us. They had 2 kids about the same age as our oldest 2. And we're like, let's just get them together and I'll hold a Bible study. And what I didn't realize would happen is that attempt, or just that idea actually somehow grew. I don't know. I still don't know how the word spread, but we have now roughly about 20 kids that are coming every Tuesday night to our home, and the majority of them are Khmer. Go figure, all right? And so here we have, you see some of the guys. What I do is I actually split up. So if you're here youth group, right, what I did at youth group is how I do our youth group there. We split them up in groups, and we do a lot of group activities. I'm teaching through what we call the roots of faith, and it's just a chronological story of the Bible and understanding the Bible, and it's a lot of fun. The kids really enjoy it. Some of the youth kids come over. This was during Easter, and we were decorating cookies at Easter. No, Christmas. I can't remember what this is. It's one of those two. We do it both, but they'll come over and we'll do cookies, and they love that kind of stuff. They love to decorate, hang out with our family. The 2 girls on the left, the girl on the right is Nayat Mul. Her mom was the one that's devout Buddhist. The 2 girls on the left, they have often said, thank you so much for allowing us to come over. We've had interactions with Christians and other missionaries, and we just never felt welcomed, which is I don't know these missionaries, but I don't know what happened there. But they genuinely enjoy coming over, and they'll just hang out and be with our family. And I don't know if their home life is that great. I get the sense that their parents are off and they're just home alone a lot of times, and so they love to be part of the family and just enjoy doing this kind of stuff. And it gives opportunities for gospel. They are not saved, so you can be praying for them. It's Visa and Kim are their names. Sorry, Vinny and Kim. Visa is different gal. So we also have Sunday morning worship service. Again, this was kind of born out of COVID. Churches closed, and I could only handle live streaming so much with our family. And so, again, we had a missionary couple and another couple. And actually what happened was we were traveling, and we ended up being at this hotel, this guest house during COVID, because we knew, long story short, we knew a family who owned it, and they allowed us to go there as just a group of people. And we got together, and Sunday morning came, and we were just like, I asked them, I was like, hey, I haven't done communion in like a year and a half. Can we just do communion together as a body of believers? And they're like, yeah, that's great, let's do that. And so we got together, we sang a few songs a cappella. There's 3 families, and we just did communion. We prayed together, and afterwards we were like, wow, we're missing this. And so we just said, you know what, let's get together every Sunday, and we'll just start doing some Bible studies. And it has grown into, again, by accident, a home church it's international, it's English, but it's a home church where we have, on any given Sunday, anywhere between 15 to 30 people, depending on who's traveling and where people are going. This is a Christmas Eve service that we did. We did it outside because it was too big for us to hold inside our house. So we cleared our courtyard, and we did a Christmas Eve service where I was able to teach and share the gospel. We had some people that weren't saved. They brought some Kamai friends. And so it's just been an inadvertent ministry that God sometimes just drops in your lap at times. So we go with it. And then in the afternoon, so our mornings are like this every Sunday morning. We have church service. Our home church service starts at 10. That gets done at about noon. Sometimes we eat lunch together, and sometimes we don't. It just kind of depends how people are feeling. Typically, people are out of our house by around 1:15. At that point, Haley and I are scrambling because we have to leave by 2 to get out to the province where we are a part of a church in a province about an hour away that starts at about 3:15. And so this is where we help a Kamai pastor. His name is Sita. We'll talk about him just a little bit. He has a church out there. He actually does 2 churches. This is the one that he had asked me to help him with. And so we go there, and it's such a blast. Our kids love it. They love going. They interact with the Kamai kids. They learn these different Kamai stories or Bible stories in Kamai. Sorry, they're not Kamai stories. They're Bible stories in Kamai. And it's just a blessing to be a part of that. This is actually me here teaching at Torm Kanar. This is Lon. He was translating for me because, again, if you read my newsletters, I'm not to the point where I can preach in Kamai yet. And the reason for that is it's like a completely different language. To give you an example, the pronoun for me, I, like if I want to say I or me, it's kinyom, okay? But if I am referring to myself in relation to God, it's a different word, okay? And there's even another word, pronoun-wise, if I am actually talking directly to God, like if I'm praying, that's a whole nother pronoun altogether. And so if I misuse those pronouns, it can actually de-elevate God and bring him down to our level. And it's even the same thing with, so like when we're reading through the Bible and we use a pronoun for God, it's he, him, right? But in Kamai, it's a completely different pronoun that's special for God. So I'm in the process of memorizing this and learning this and learning how to use it and when to use it on top of Kamai. So This happened when I was not expecting it to happen. I had a goal that I'm going to preach my first Khmer sermon at the end of this year. Well, I get a call from Sita, and he's like, hey, I can't make it. Can you teach? And I'm like, yeah, that's great, no problem. Am I going to have a translator? He's like, oh, yeah, my wife can translate for you. She'll be there. I'm like, okay, that's cool. So I get there, and I'm like, okay, her name's Slanit. I'm like, okay, Slanit, Sita wants you to translate. She's like, no, you can do it. I'm like, actually, I can't. And she's like, no, you'll be fine. And if you need something, I'll help you from here. I'm like, okay. So here I am, completely unprepared for this, trying to speak in Khmer and preach in Khmer, and I would say it was a train wreck, because I'm sitting here and I'm like, God so loved, what's that word? And like I'm going through a Rolodex in my mind of these vocabulary words that I'm trying to remember. World, that's right, world, right? And there are times where I use the wrong word and they're looking at me like, what? And I can tell in their face, like I just said something I should have. And so I'm talking to them in normal Kai, everyday Khmer, and I'm explaining what they're like, oh, yeah, it's this word that you're supposed to use. I'm like, okay, thanks. And then I told Sita, I was like, you might not have a church next week. But they're gracious. They're super gracious, super kind. But that was my first sermon in Khmer, and it was an absolute train wreck. But I learned, actually, when I come back, because Sita's actually in the United States, he and I flew out together. When I go back, because I go back before him, I'll be preaching again in Khmer. So you can be praying for me on that, because I'm still like 50% there. So we'll see what happens. I might be doing a lot of reading my message a lot. Do a lot of language study in Khmer, and we kind of treat this as a ministry as well, where we bring over our tutors, and we actually read through what we call the story of hope, and I'll show you that here and kind of what that's about. And it's an opportunity. A lot of our tutors aren't saved, and so we're going through the Bible with them, and they have questions. It's really cool. They have a lot of questions, and they're asking us things about God, and they're asking really deep and theological questions. And it's really helped us, even with our theological vocabulary. And so those are just some different pictures. One of the opportunities for my daughter, she's doing language study. Olivia, she's actually really good in Khmer. She can speak it pretty well. They took her to a trip to Takeo province where they're exploring old temples, and they're giving her a lot of history on Cambodian culture in Khmer, so she got an opportunity to see that and do that. The girl or the lady that she's standing with on the left is Sopaktra. Again, that name might resonate with you because we've been praying for Sopaktra's salvation for a long time, and she's getting there. I truly believe the Lord's calling her. All right, Story of Hope training. This is our main ministry. This is what we do. This is in fact, the church. You guys, I cannot articulate enough what you guys mean to us. Your support, your prayers, financially and otherwise, is felt halfway around the world. And this is the story of hope. This is a culmination of your guys' prayers, of your guys' giving, and your support and your love. If you want to look at these are two books that we had translated into Khmer, and this is the basis of our ministry. This is what we are doing. We're traveling around different provinces, and we're getting together primarily with pastors, but they do bring Sunday school teachers. They'll bring other people in their congregation, and we just teach them. We teach them theological things. And this particular item is, it's like a very simplistic version of Creation to Christ. We start at the very beginning. We work our way through chronologically through the Bible. 20 events in the Old Testament, 20 events in the New Testament. Each event points to Christ and the redemptive work, and it kind of gives them an idea, the big idea of what the Bible's about. Because in Cambodia, they don't really know what the Bible's about. Even people that have been believers for 10, 15 years, some of them can't even can't even tell you all the books of the Bible, right? And so the lack of training there is immense. And they really stay away from the Old Testament, which I get excited about because I love the Old Testament. And so they stay away from the Old Testament. They primarily stay in the New Testament. And so we try to connect those for them and give them a good foundation at which point we will build upon. And that's what we're working on. So I have a little video to show you the story of hope. So if you want to push play on that. Context here. We always try to take some of our teachers on just a little tiny excursion after or during the training, just to get them out and debrief with them a little bit. So that is just kind of give you a typical view of what our training is. A lot of interaction. We do a lot of different games and activities. And the idea is we're trying to not just preach to them, but we're trying to give them the tools to understand how to read God's word and to ask the right questions and to pull out of the text for themselves what is being taught. Right, so it's really kind of a lot of different nuances and facets that we're doing for them or with them, and they love it. One of our philosophies is we bring our kids with us. We want them involved in our ministry, and they love it. So Olivia and Jackson and Parker, they a lot of times watch some of the kids of the pastors or the people that are coming. They'll help with childcare and help in that way. They'll wash dishes. There have been times where we feed a lot of the pastors and people that attend. It's a way to kind of bless them and encourage them. They're taking time off of work that a lot of them can't afford. And so a way that we can bless them and help in that way is to feed them. Well, Olivia and Jackson have just taken it up, the idea, hey, this is the way I can serve. I can't necessarily get up and teach. I can't necessarily get up and do some of the things that mom and dad are helping with, but they can be in the background and they're serving. So they do a lot of dishwashing. Here you see a picture of Olivia and Jackson helping set up. Parker and Riker have now started taking on this job. And they go and they take these books that we have and they help me set up the classroom so it looks like this when we get ready to start. So when the pastors come in, the tables are all set, pens are ready, we got Post-it notes, we got all sorts of things. Each table has 2 books and it's ready to go. And it's just a way for them to serve and be a part of the ministry. I'm a firm believer in allowing our kids to serve alongside of us and for them not to feel like, oh, that's mom and dad's ministry and we're just here for the ride. And so it's been a blessing to see that. A typical thing, we start with music, we start with song. At the very beginning when they get there, there's a brief introduction, then we start with some worship. We do different activities. So this is a funny story. one of the things that the goal of this is at the end, by memory, they can go through all the events of the Old Testament and New Testament in chronological order, and they can do it by memory, and they can give you a brief recap of each event, some of the important pieces. That's the goal, and that's what we do. One way to help them is we do actions, and this is something I got from ABWE. It's not my thing, but I have had to adapt it a little bit to the Khmer culture, and this one is talking about Christ sitting on his kingdom, it's the kingdom, right? It's talking about Christ sitting on his throne. And so when I do it, they all start laughing. And they're like, oh, he's riding a moto, right? And so they totally, I guess I'm not getting low enough like I'm sitting. And so they all, the first couple times I did it, they're like, yeah, kingdom. And I'm like, well, do a quick prayer. I am not trying to be blasphemous, Christ. God, it's not at all. So that's a picture of that, and you can see Lon there. He's kind of laughing at me and being like, whoa, there. A lot of times when they're doing self-study, we like to involve our kids. They'll come in, they'll sit in my lap, and the Khmer people love it. It opens up different avenues and endears them to what's going on. Here you have Sita and I are teaching, so there is lecture. It's not just fun and games. There is lecture time. There is a time of talking and instructing and teaching and helping them to understand what the right answer is, because a lot of times they get the wrong answer, and so we're correcting that and helping with that. And then there's some debriefing at the end of each day. I sit down with my teachers. These are our teachers here for this class. You have Andre, Andrew, and Lon, and we talk about the day. And I help them, maybe they said something or they weren't quite interactive enough. It's both content and delivery. And so it's just a good time to talk. And I get feedback from them. Hey, what went well? Because they're Khmer, I'm not. And they will give me feedback on this actually resonated with them, this did not. And so we're constantly kind of tweaking the curriculum and tweaking the teaching to help connect with the Khmer people. And then this is a byproduct of just training. So Andrew is sitting there in the forefront on the very right-hand side. He's one of our teachers. We're actually looking at bringing him on staff full-time as one of our full-time teachers. But he's a pastor, and he has a heart for men, and I love it. And this is after one of our last training in Stung Treng, and these are old men that have been Christians for quite a while, and they are in villages where they are being persecuted immensely. And they're asking Andrew questions. Sorry if I'm... And he spent 3 or 4 hours with them, just over some coffee, and just encouraging him. Hey, don't give up. Don't grow weary. Right? Do the work of evangelists. And I just had the privilege of just being really a fly on the wall, just sitting there, just listening to this man that is my partner encourage other men, Khmer men, that are struggling with the ministry. And it's just a blessing. That's a byproduct of this. The other byproduct of this is we serve them coffee, and they're not used to drinking coffee at like 10 o'clock at night. And so the next morning, all of these pastors come up to me and they're like, teacher, I didn't get a wink of sleep. And I'm like, what? Why? And they're like, you gave me coffee. What was in that coffee? I'm like, it was just coffee. Like, oh. And they do this. They're like, when they say they can't sleep, they're like, my eyes are like this all night. And I'm like, well, make sure they're like this the rest of the training too. No falling asleep during the lesson. And they didn't. It was good. Here's Sita. This is Pastor Sita, probably my main partner and national and dear friend. We'll talk about him in just a second, but he was one of the teachers here in Stung Treng. So we have about 4 teachers that we rotate through. 3 we take with us pretty much everywhere. And we'll add Andre to us a couple times, but he lives so far. He lives up by the Thai border, so it's kind of hard to come up and go get him. depending on where we're going. So these are our teachers. This is our primary teachers. These guys go with me everywhere. And you'll see on the left, this was a serious picture. And on the right, this is our boy band picture. And actually, it was by accident, because I was kind of like, okay, guys, let's do a serious, funny picture. And they kind of looked at me like it was like, what? And I'm doing this, and all the rest of them are kind of dumbfounded, like, what are you talking about? And this is the masterpiece that I get. And I love it. I'm going to put it on a CD case, and it's like, it's like a 90s boy band kind of a thing, right? But so you have Sita on the left. You have Lon in the middle. Lon is a guy that I have discipled for about 2.5 years. We meet every week, and we go through different things of the Bible. And I'm teaching him, instructing him, and he has a heart, he has a desire to go into the ministry some way. He has an evangelist heart. He can strike up a conversation with anyone, anywhere. In fact, it is because of him that I met Sita. So if you know the newsletter, if you know the story, Lon and I are in a coffee shop where I'm doing our discipleship, and in the middle of our lesson, he stops me and he goes, "Hey, Trevor, see that guy over there?" I'm like, "Which one? They all look the same." He's like, no, over there in the corner. I'm like, "Oh, okay, yeah." He's like, "His name's Sita." I'm like, "Cool." He goes, "Do you know him?" I'm like, "I don't know him." I'm like, "Do you know him?" He's like, "No, but I watch his videos." He does videos on Facebook. I'm like, "Oh, that's cool." I go, "What does he teach?" He's like, "Oh, he teaches the Bible. He does these 10-minute videos on the Bible." I'm like, "That's cool. Are they good?" And he's like, "Yeah, they're really solid." I'm like, "Oh, cool. I'll have to look at that." He goes, "I'm going to go introduce myself to him." "All right, go for it, buddy. I got some work I can do." So he gets up and he goes over and he introduces himself to Sita, and I'm doing some work. And next thing I know, about 20 minutes later, they're standing over me. And Lon proceeds, "Hey, Sita, this is Trevor. Trevor, this is Sita." And we start talking. And for the next 2 hours, we're talking about what Sita does. He has been doing basically pastor training, kind of what we are doing for 10 years in Cambodia. And so I was like, "Oh, this is interesting." So we started talking and sharing different information, and he's learned more about the story of hope. And he's like, "We need to get together. We need to talk some more." And so about a week later, I reached out to him. We met at another coffee shop, and for the next 8 hours, we just had a conversation about ministry and what is needed in Cambodia and what we're trying to do, and our vision aligned. And he was looking at the story of hope. He was asking questions, and he's like, "This is what they need. They need the story of hope." He goes, he's doing something called the BTCP program. It's actually really good. He gave me the English version of it so I could really read through it pretty quickly. Very solid, but it's seminary level stuff, right? And he's like, these guys, it's over their head. It's too deep for them. They need something more foundational. And later we can come up with the BTC program and build on top of that. And I agreed with him. I was like, "Yeah, I agree." And he goes, I want you to start coming with me to all these different training events that I have, and we're going to start doing the Story of Hope stuff. Okay, thanks, God, right? That's amazing. But I was like, "Hey, before you do that, I really want you to see what the Story of Hope is doing." So we had a training actually already scheduled. So I invited him. He invited like 10 other pastors that he knew to the training. And afterwards, he was just like, "Yes, we need to do this. Let's go." And it has been, our hair has been on fire since. God has orchestrated that meeting, that appointment, and it was completely a God thing. And he has been a blessing. It has grown into a friendship, a deep friendship, where we encourage one another and hold each other accountable. And it is something that I have never dreamed I would have. In fact, one of the things that Haley and I lamented a lot was, well, we're alone here. We don't have any partners. We don't have any ministry partners. We don't have team, any part of team. And we kind of let go of that, like, that's never going to happen. And we realized, no, God actually did. They're just national partners. And something that is a blessing. Now, since then, we actually got word that we actually have some new team members coming to the field, hopefully in about 2 years. And so that's an answer to prayer. That you guys have had in our newsletter. Okay, so another reason why we're doing this, and guys, I cannot articulate this enough. This is not about me. This is not about what our family is doing. This is what God's doing in Cambodia and how he's moving and how he's working through your prayers, through your support, through your love. We just get to be on the ground, on this roller coaster and going for the ride. And it's really cool. And I want to hopefully give you this encouragement and excitement of what God's doing around the world. So this is our last training that we finished. It was about 2 weeks before I came here. And we finished it. We handed out all these different certificates. And this guy, his name is Pisay. He's Lao. He's from Laos, and he's part Khmer. I shouldn't say he's from Laos. His dad's from Laos. His mom is Khmer. So he's part Laos. And he actually speaks Lao, he speaks Khmer, and he speaks English. Very intelligent guy. He makes me feel stupid. And he, after the training, he's about 35, or 30, might be 32. He calls me, he goes, "Hey, teacher, Trevor, come here. I need to talk to you." And so we sit down at this table, and he's like, I need to tell you about the importance of what this story of hope is doing. And he tells me, during the week, I go out to these villages. So this province is called Stung Treng, and it's pretty close to the Lao border. So there's a lot of actually Lao villages in Cambodia where they speak Lao. And so he has kind of a heart to go and reach them because Lao is actually a closed country, like a truly closed country. And so he goes into these villages and he's just sharing the gospel with whoever he can share the gospel with. And he goes, I went to this one village. He goes, I've been there a couple times and I'm there. And the elder of the village, right, the older guy, he sees Pisay and he's like, "Come here." Pisay's like, "Okay." So he goes over and they proceed. He asks them, "What can I help you with?" And he goes, "You teach about Jesus, right?" He's like, "Yeah." He goes, "I want you to tell me what the Bible's about." And Pisay goes, I was like, "That's a big question, right? Where do I begin with that? The Bible. I teach okay." And he goes, "And then I remembered that you and Sita had sent me a PDF copy of the story of hope in Khmer." He goes, so I whip out my phone and I pull up the story of hope. And he goes, for the next 3 to 4 hours, they sit down and they go through the story of hope. And he's talking about what the Bible's about. And the old man sits back and he goes, "I think that's true. I think that's true." He goes, "I want you to come back every week and I want you to teach my people what you just taught me." He didn't make a decision. He didn't say it was true. He's thinking about it. He's like, that makes sense to me. And Pisay looked at me and he goes, "Don't stop what you're doing, Trevor. Keep doing it." And I say that because some of the things that we're a little concerned about is there are some government restrictions that are possibly coming down. I would call it an attack on the Christian faith, attack on the church. And I had a men's prayer meeting about a month ago with some missionaries that are kind of like-minded and that are scattered throughout Cambodia. We met in Phnom Penh and we did a 24-hour prayer meeting, and all of us are a little nervous about these restrictions. But we all kind of came to the point where it's like, hey, God's on his throne, right? The nations scoff and they laugh, or the nations scoff and they devise vain things, Psalm 2. But it says God is on his throne and he laughs and he scoffs at them. And so we came away with, no, we need to speak with boldness. We need to pray that we can speak with boldness, Acts 4. And Paul talks about that over and over again in Ephesians. Pray that we have the boldness to speak the gospel. So we walked away with that, and then I meet with this guy, and he's encouraged me. He says, "Hey, stay faithful. Continue, persevere, continue on. God is working, and he's using this material. He's using these different things. He's using him. He's using Pisay for his glory. And we just need to be faithful and obedient in that." And so that's just a little bit about Pisay. So something that you guys can be praying about. I'll be taking questions here in a little bit. So Takao Province, we love Takao Province. This is actually where the church is that we go and help at on Sunday evenings, is in this Takao Province. Again, it's about an hour away from our house currently in Phnom Penh. And we're considering going out and moving in that direction. We're torn. We don't know really what to do. On one hand, Phnom Penh is it's a great hub. We get a lot of interaction with a lot of different people, and it allows us a lot of access to go out and spread throughout the country, especially as we travel. At the same time, we have a heart for this Khmer church that desperately needs some help. And so you guys can just be praying. The other part that we love about Khmer, I mean, I'm not going to lie. There's green. Phnom Penh is a concrete jungle. Like you're lucky if you find a patch of grass. In fact, I'm pretty sure our yard, we planted the grass. Our yard is possibly the only green grass in Phnom Penh. It's an exaggeration, but not quite, not completely. And so we do love the nature and what's going on. Another prayer request you can be praying about, Lucia. So to kind of keep this short, Lucia was basically, we had known her because she had been living across the street. It wasn't her family. She'd just been living across the street, and she'd come over to our house pretty much all day and be with our kids and play with them. She actually was calling my wife Mom for a while because her mom dropped her off at that place, and she had other things that she needed to do. For brevity's sake, I'm not going to get into that. But the next door neighbors across the street, for reasons not quite understood by us, kicked her out. The mom came and grabbed her, and she was gone. And so it kind of devastated my wife. She had been hearing the gospel. She'd been going to church with us. And she kept saying, I want to know more about Jesus. I want to know more about Jesus. And so my wife and I just sat down and we're like, well, let's just pray. Pray that God would bring someone into her life that would build upon the foundation that we had laid and that God would just work. And a week later, she comes bursting through our doors. And we're like, what are you doing here? She goes, I'm here to live with you. Oh, you are? All right. And so we're talking to her, and she said, yeah, my mom just dropped me off. And we're like, wait, your mom's here? She's like, yes. We run out, and mom's already gone. And we've just had some communication. Again, long story short, her mom wants us to basically raise her, give her an education, and provide for some things that she can't in this life. And so we are working through a lot of the nuances of that. We are very aware of some of the challenges and some of the dangers of that. And so we are asking for your prayers and wisdom on how to handle that. My wife is hopefully going to work with a lawyer while I'm gone and talk with him about legal guardianship, possibly adoption, both of which are very challenging to do in Cambodia because when adoption was happening, they learned, oh, hey, we can get money for our kids. And so they were actually selling their kids into adoption. And the government's like, no, that's not going to happen. So it is challenging to adopt. But again, with God, he's in control, and we just seek his will and whatever he wants. And so specifically with Lucia, please pray first and foremost for her salvation. She's very interested, very open, and we just pray that she would come to know the Lord as her personal Lord and Savior. And then if the Lord wills, he would remove all obstacles and allow her to become an AMAC. So we would have 7 kids instead of 6. So, all right, future ministry opportunities. Dorm ministry. We're considering dorm ministry. I can't tell you the doors that open. Basically, the idea is as high school students graduate from the province, they all come to Phnom Penh. All the universities are in Phnom Penh. And so they're moving to Phnom Penh, and they don't have a place to stay. And so what you do is you open up a dorm ministry, guys ministry, or a guys dorm, a girls dorm, and we have several solid Khmer Christian friends that would be interested in running that. They would stay there for like $5 or $10 a month, but then they would also hear the gospel. Either it'd be Bible studies that we do. We'd also do other like soft skills. We teach them how to use a computer. We would do music. We would do English because they really want to learn English. And so there's opportunity here for the gospel. And it's been very, very successful. Haley and I often say anytime we run in to somebody that's heard the name of Jesus or they call themselves a Christian, it stems from 2 different things. An English school or dorm ministry. Every time. That's how the gospel has been spreading in Cambodia. And so it's pretty effective. So it's something we're considering. considering animated videos and other media to supplement the story of hope. YouTube right now is fairly new to Cambodia, right? It's old news to us, it's new news to them, and unfortunately we are having a dickens of a time combating some false teachers that are pouring millions of dollars into translating their sermons and putting it on YouTube. And the Khmer Christians, even if they are truly Christian, they don't know better. They have lack of training, and they're listening to this and they're eating it up. And so we have, I work with some other missionaries, and we have this heart and this desire to pump out some solid quality Christian videos and other media to kind of stem off that tide that's coming. Sita, he supports his ministry through a school, and he's looking for a teacher, specifically an English teacher, to come short-term, long-term, and so we're trying to hopefully fill that role somehow, some way. I don't know what that looks like. Translation projects, we translated the story of hope. We have the roots of faith, and another one, how to study God's word. Those are the two that we really want to translate, get resources into the hands and teach. So roots of faith it builds off of this. So instead of 20, it's 50 in the old, 50 in the new. And then how to study God, how to study the Bible. They just don't know how to. And so how can we give them a resource to help with that? And then Lao and Vietnamese ministries. I already told you about the Lao. We also have an opportunity with Vietnam. Story of Hope's actually already translated into Vietnamese, which makes it easy. But Sita knows people both in Lao and in Vietnam that he wants to connect with me. And the idea is to help them get started in Vietnam and Lao what we're doing in Cambodia. And so that has always been my prayer. Cambodia has been open. What if God could use Cambodia as that launch pad, that launching point to get into some of these closed countries like Vietnam and Laos? And I never dreamed that I actually would get to see it come to fruition. That was just kind of a dream. And God is like, not only is it starting to happen, he's like, I get to be a part of it. And that's, what a blessing. It's just beyond what I can even fathom. So questions I don't know, we have any time left? I talk loud? No? Okay. No questions. You don't get questions. If you have questions, I will be available afterwards in the foyer. You can ask me any question you want. No, you can't ask me any question you want because I might not know them. But you can ask me questions, and I'd love to talk to you about it. I have stories after stories to tell you. There's so much more about Sita. There's so much more about Lon that I could tell you guys about and how the Lord's working in their lives. One last thing, if you can be praying for my wife. She's back in Cambodia with our 6 kids, well, 7, because Lucia is actually living with us. And she's doing that alone for the next 2 weeks. And she's already been doing it for a week. And so if you just pray for her, patience and love and just protection while I'm gone. So let me pray, and then we can break. Father God, you are the God of all people. Lord, you're the creator of all things. And it is because of your great love and your mercy and your grace that I can even stand up here this morning and share what you are doing around the world. And Lord, I am so grateful and so thankful to be your servant. I'm thankful for this church, for their love and for their prayers and their support in so many different ways. Lord, I pray that we would all be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work that you have called us to do, wherever we are at, wherever we are placed. Lord, we thank you for the cross, the blood that was shed on our behalf, because I am a sinner and I'm destined for hell, but it is only through your Son that we can have hope. Lord, may you be glorified, may you be honored this morning. The songs that we will be singing, may they be a joyful noise to your ears. May they reflect the character of who you are as we sing them. Lord, as we open your word, may your Spirit challenge us and convict us and encourage us this morning. Lord, we give you all glory and all honor because you are worthy. In my prayer, amen.